Welcome back to another week's episode of Indie Insights Live. We are going to be joined this week by the one, the only Mark Denkler, the president of the NSRA, the National Shoe Retailers Association. So before we jump in with Mark, just a reminder of how Indie Insights Live works. We're, of course, here today joined by our live audience, which we encourage you, ask questions, participate. You have Mark and mine's undivided attention, so feel free to jump in at any moment. You could also watch this webinar back on our YouTube channel. We'll be sending that out to everyone who registered as well. And then in addition, you can now find us on Apple Podcast and Spotify, so you could listen in the car, on the way to work, when you have some time in the stock room. You could listen to Indie Insights Live. We're coming to you every week, Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern live. And then again, you could catch us on all those platforms. So let's introduce our guest, Mark Denkler. Thanks for being here today with us.
Oh, you're welcome, Dane. We've known each other ever since I became president. I don't know if we knew each other when I had my stores, but you're a valuable resource to the industry. This is a great thing. Like you said, it's the podcast mode. It's great because you can listen to it on your own time. It's tough for everybody to go, okay, I got to do this. I had a Zoom meeting yesterday, and a guy goes, "Oh, I had to be on the floor," and he was the guy we needed to talk to. I had 5 staff people waiting for him, and but it's tough to do. So we appreciate you getting these together and getting it to people on their own time.
Yeah, and listen, Mark, you've been a friend of Management One for many, many years, and we've gotten to, we just actually were on stage together at Project in Las Vegas. We've been, to conferences together and shoe shows and trade shows. So it's really great to sit down and always have a conversation about what's happening in the industry. But before we get to the now, we want to rewind a little bit. Mark, let's get to know you and our audience to know you. You're the president of the National Shoe Retailers Association, but where did this all begin?
Well, actually, working summers for my uncle. I live in Florida. We had our stores in Florida. We had 3, 4 stores over the years in South Florida. And my uncle reached out to me in 1984. I always joke, he wanted to give me $50,000 to manage the stores, but what did I do? I went to go work for a bank for 19,000. But I at the time that wasn't what I needed to do. I wanted to work in big business in a tall office building, and that's really when I wanted to go. And I didn't think he's going to make it because guess what? He wasn't in malls, and I'm a stupid 22-year-old who thought malls were the only way to be, and he's not going to make it. But then 10 years, let's just say I stayed in Houston, worked for the biggest bank in Houston. I was an auditor for 3 years because things were tough in the oil patch. And then finally, when that went through, I went through an executive training program, learned financial analysis, was a lender in the national desk for a few years. And then I switched to Fuji Bank, where I did loans anywhere from 20 million to $1 billion.
Wow.
But working for the Japanese and 15 hours a day, once we had our son, I was like, this isn't going to work. And so my wife, being a buyer for Foley's department store in Houston, and me with my financial background, we decided to take up my uncle's offer 11 years later. And then we're in the business for 29 years. And then we'll kind of get into the talk about why, but our rent was going to go from $50 a square foot to $100 a square foot. So 3,000 square foot store, that meant an extra 150,000 I was going to have to pay. And we didn't want to work for our landlord. We wanted to work for ourselves, but we had made enough money. So we retired. But before I could retire, I got this job. So here I've been here for almost 6 years.
Okay, so 29 years you and your wife were running the store.
Right.
Wow. And what year did we take over from your uncle?
1994.
Wow. Okay, so you've seen a lot of eras, I like to say, of the industry.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, as I looked when we got there. My wife was used to computer systems, so my uncle did it, and we're a $400,000 store. My wife was buying $35 million for the department store. She was buyer of the year. A little shout out to my wife. So she definitely had the skills. And so after a year, we just said, "Hey, can we take over?" And so we want to do the buying, and okay, that $400,000 store, you're buying what, $200,000 or less or more, give or take a few thousand. And so we did it. First thing we did was get a computer system, because that's what my wife was used to and I was used to, and my uncle had a fit. I can tell you what's missing from every wall, just looking at it. I'm like, but you have to take sizes. This will be up to date, and it's kind of what your competition was doing. They were all start going into it. Now it's AI. So it's like, okay, we all got to get on the AI bandwagon, which I'm sure we'll discuss later on.
Oh yes. And listen, what a great time to take over a retail business. Those,
Yeah.
late 90s is when things really exploded. So I'm sure you rode that wave. Okay, so you're a shoe dog, right?
Yeah.
As we can see, we got some background images where shoe dog through and through. So let's take it now to the present. Why don't you give us just a little bit of color of how the NSRA is working with retailers and what that relationship looks like right now? Because I think that you have a real bird's eye view. I really like talking with people who are, in the associations and conferences, because I think they get a real bird's eye view talking to so many retailers. So how is that current relationship structured? How are you working with your retailers?
Well, the NSRA, for people who don't know about the NSRA, we're like Management One. You guys help retailers. We help retailers in the independent footwear chain. So we give benefits, we give networking opportunities. Actually, I worked with one of your colleagues in Atlanta. We had a seminar on AI, and he was our AI expert. He's helped develop all your AI tools. And
Shout
so
out to
Adam,
Adam. Shout out to
yes,
Adam.
yes, Adam did a great job, and added a lot to it, because you guys have a lot of that knowledge. You and I are numbers guys, so we love data. But the NSRA is here for people to give them networking opportunities. We give them education, benefits through shipping, credit cards. So there's a lot of different things. Then we have I was in a meeting today with a bunch of NSRA retailers. I'll have another one through our Next Gen program tomorrow. They meet every 2 weeks. We're trying to train the next generation of leaders of the industry, which is very beneficial, because vendors like it, because they know there's a future to very successful stores. So that program's been, I mean, some of the graduates, I would say, are the who's who of the industry, of the top stores. And we have, I guess, the next graduating class. There's about 15 in our program right now. Always more, but you always hear different excuses. Oh, I can't do it. But, we're just here to help people, and that's where I am. I listen to everything. So here we are. We're going to be talking to people about what are the issues facing and what you need to do to meet those challenges.
Yeah, and here's why I like talking in the footwear industry and with shoe dogs. By the way, fun fact: my dad was a shoe retailer, so I am very, I'm very familiar with the community and the passion and all that goes into running a business. And this is why I like talking with footwear retailers and getting your perspective as as a kind of indicator of the entire industry, because I think footwear retailers are usually dealing with a lot of high volume. They're dealing with
Mhm.
really complex vendor relationships. They're dealing with margins that they need to really be tight on. So they run their business, right? You guys run your business in a very tight way. And in order to be successful, you really have to be working and hustling as a retailer. So I think that getting that perspective, again, why we call this kind of the early indicators, is because I think that there's so much value in how a footwear retailer approaches the business.
Oh, totally. And I will say, when I had my stores, my friends wanted my advice. How is the economy? Because I always had a precursor of what was going on. When the internet boom was dying in the late 90s or so, I could see that coming on. Then when the financial crisis was coming on, I'm like, okay, people, 6 months beforehand, some people were not buying, and you're like, okay, what's going on? So you know a lot owning your own store and listening to your customers, seeing their buying habits, what has changed. We used to have trunk shows, and a lady would buy 15 pair of shoes. Well, then after 2008, it became 6 pair of shoes. And then later on, it became 4 pair of shoes at these events, because you could just tell the tightening of what they did. I mean, actually, I thought I was a fantastic retailer, increasing sales 25% every year in the early 2000s. And then
Mm-hmm.
2008 comes by, and next thing I know, oh, I'm down 50%. Okay, I just lost a little under $1 million in sales. And you're like, okay, maybe it wasn't that brilliant. Maybe it was people
Right,
thought
right,
I was
right.
riding the wave up, but we were built for it because we knew what we were doing. When it came in, we said, okay, something's going to happen. We decreased our buy 10%. Unfortunately, I was about 30% too low, but things worked out. But it's great. And one reason I left those 15-hour days, it's not that I don't work 15-hour days when I had my stores. It was more seasonal, but you're working for yourself. You're making and breaking it yourself.
Yeah, that's the life of a retailer. And so, I think that point though, right, of riding the wave, because
Right.
it works both ways. Your business, the overall structure and fundamentals of your business will, if they're strong, they'll be able to ride that wave up, and they'll also be able to sustain through those dips. So I think that's what we at Management One try to do. We want the efficiency of the business to be there, so that during those ebbs and flows of the natural economy, you're more focused on what you can control in your business, controlling those controllables. So let's kind of start with, you were just in Atlanta. Again, shout out to Adam. Mark Weiss, our CEO, was there as well. Can you give us a temperature check? You're with a whole trade show of shoe dogs and retailers, and some of the brightest minds in the footwear industry. What's the temperature check on the retail industry right now?
Well, if you don't watch the news, because if you listen to news, oh my gosh, tariffs are 50%. Last year tariff was the big buzzword, and inflation was only 3.5% last year. So you're like, wait a second, if our tariffs were this high, it wasn't a big percentage. Okay, you buy a shoe for $50 and it went up to say 55. You're still only marking it up a certain percentage. So I think retailers are resilient. They have to, like I always go, okay, in 2008, I paid myself $5,000 for the whole year because I didn't have any money to pay because it went down more than what I thought. We had great years, but if you look at your numbers, and then it makes you rethink how things are doing. Because after that, then we're like, okay, we need more subclasses because just, this athletic, I need more running, walking, or tailored dress shoes versus flats or something. So you have to analyze better. The strongest, as you said, always survive. So I think right now you hear everything doom and gloom on the news, but people are doing okay. I mean, footwear sales are sluggish, but we do monthly surveys and most people are up for the year. And their margins are under control as well, because the smart ones are looking for those hidden areas to grow their business by, okay, let me get some closeouts and sell those, or let me get some off price. And as we talked in at Magic in a project, building a first cost business, your own private label, because then you start out at 80%. And when you put that 145 shoe on sale that you bought for 35, market 25% off, you're still making 67 points.
Right.
You know,
And we'll definitely talk
yeah,
about
well,
private
yeah, we'll get
label.
into that, but no, but it's there's a lot of things. Nike dumped everybody back in the after COVID, thought they could do it themselves, and then you get the others, Hoka and Brooks and On, that all of a sudden were $500 million companies before COVID. They're now all $2 billion companies.
Mm.
So, but where did they ride that? They rode it with the independents, and they find these brands. We go to shows, we find it. I mean, I kind of know a few upcoming brands that I've seen in reports based on what our retailers say. But yeah, you're always looking for the next best thing, and then you're looking for margin builders. You're trying to differentiate yourself. One of the things, athletic. I mean, I was a guy. Okay, before 2019, only a leather bottom shoe. Now I wear sneakers with my slacks. I'm not there with suits yet, but I am with the slacks. But yeah, what you look at ESPN, all the guys have suits and sneakers on.
Right. Well, there's a lot to unpack here. So I want to kind of roll back a little bit because there were some great points that we just kind of hit on. First, I really want to talk about the Nike backlash, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
this was a huge pivotal moment, I think, in the independent footwear industry. And I think that the lessons learned
Everybody, it
here,
was mass
right?
market too.
Right. I think that these lessons, but we're the indie guys here, we're the independents. So, but I think that this lesson translates, to every type of retailer out there. So, give us a little bit of kind of that description of what really was the impact of Nike pulling out from so many independents and how great retailers kind of evolved with this.
Well, and that's where those guys went to. Okay, I can't have Nikes. I mean, I know a store that was doing about $1 million, and Nike. Actually, our store is the second store in Florida to have Nike. My uncle had a great eye, and I know another Phil Wright was one of the people up in Maryland. But when they pulled back, they dropped a lot of business. So what do you have to do? You have to find other brands. My customer still wants athletic. I can't do Nike, but guess what? They can't get it at Dick's anymore, or Macy's, or Foot Locker. So I use that as an opportunity to find those brands that I was kind of doing well with, but I didn't want to lose that name. So that's where,
Mm.
okay, we did more in Brooks, we did more in Hoka, and other brands that, okay, we still need to get the athletic category. But then it exploded with COVID as during COVID, it was everybody was doing slippers, and Uggs was the thing that made everybody stay in business because they had those things. But independents and mom and pop stores always have to pivot, was the big COVID word, but they have to find, like me, when my rent went up 50,000 one year in 2015, I had to find, my wife is on top of sales. I was on top of uh, expenses. So what did we do? We had to develop a private label business where our margins would be 65% maintained versus starting at 55, or athletics shoe could be at 45% margins. So it makes you
Yes.
and look at everything. But that's the great thing about being independent. You know your market, and you're like, okay, they're not going to buy the Nikes now, but I'm going to get another brand that can help them.
Right. And I think that there were a lot of retailers that weren't seeing the writing on the wall and actually
Yeah,
put their noses up at the Hoka and the Ons. And when the wave hit, right, they weren't there to capitalize on it. So
yeah.
I think that freshness, that newness, continuously searching and being in a sense of discovery is super important. Now you talked about private label, and I know that you have a personal story with private label. Talk about the impact that that's having on retailers right now. I know that you went through that phase where you decided, I need more margin in the business. I know my customer, and here's how I'm going to achieve it. What does that look like for a retailer today that may be really scared of that term, private label?
Well, they shouldn't be scared, and you still need the brands to bring the people into your store. They're still going to be selling those products, so you're not getting away from those. And I've had some pushback. Why you having people build um, private label? But I'm like, well, the department stores do it. You're not telling the department stores how to do private label, and it's something that you can get for your company. And when I do have people go over to Italy or Brazil or wherever, whatever markets there are, you're looking for the things that the vendors aren't providing. So you're
Mm.
finding something that my customer wants. It could be a shoe that they gave up with last year. I know one customer, she's had this shoe now for 10 years, and they dropped it. So actually she got the vendor who had a relationship with this company to make it private label for her. Your
So,
vendors
so
will work with you too.
So I just want to catch that. So the retailer was carrying a certain shoe that was on fire for her. It was, did her
Right.
well for 10 years, and then it was discontinued. So
Yeah,
that's
then the
when,
brand goes, we don't want it anymore, but we knew the factory that made it, so we had it made, and then certain things happen, and so next thing you know, they're buying it from a different brand. But it's the word curate. We love the word curate, but you're really curating your buy for your customers. I live in South Florida. I used to have the sweaters at Macy's in the middle of the aisles and gloves. And I'm like, it's 90 degrees outside in Thanksgiving weekend. It's hot. I'm sweating. And you guys have your buyer in New York thinks this is what they just put it every store, where we can buy what our customer wants, find the new brand, introduce it. Then we always get mad that the next thing you know, they're selling to department stores and everybody loves it. And you're like, wait, you've dropped us. But there's going to be other brands, and there's brands that love independence. So they and those are a lot of our partners. People will complain about something, but I'm like, no, they're still here for us, and they still want to build your business because they know that you were there that brought them, the business at the beginning.
Yeah, and I've said it here, I've said it at shows and conferences and presentations. Brands build their distribution on the backs of independent retailers, right?
Right.
And that is what gives them that brand awareness. And something that's interesting that's happening now, which you and I kind of touched upon, is now the competition with brands doing D2C, right?
Yeah.
And now vendors are becoming their own retailers to a much larger and larger capacity. How should independents be navigating that?
Well, it was kind of like the Nike. Nike was like, hey, we're making a ton of money off this. We can do it ourselves. We're a $65 billion company. Not every, I mean, they're probably the only company that might have been able to do it, but it blew up in their face. Some of the Crocs as well. And now they're going back to the retailers. But no, you can grow your own brand curated towards your plate. Remember when we were in Magic, I talked about a store, Henry James. Henry was her one uncle and James was her other, so they made that their private label.
Mm,
But it just gives you that extra margin to help you pay for those uncontrolled things that happen in your business.
right. So that's almost your stopgap.
Yeah, it's your stopgap because yeah, okay. I know when athletics started, people, oh, I just, it's so exciting athletics. I'm like, but you're starting at a 45 margin. My store was maintained 55. Now I was a little bit
Wow.
more fashion oriented. And then with my private label, as I said, when I give my vendor scorecard to one brand, I said I do $150,000 in business with you, and my margin was 50.5. My store is 55, so you're pulling me down at 8% of my sales. You're pulling it down for me, But I needed that to be able to pay the bills.
Yeah,
Some people back in the day it was a 45 margin, then it became 50, and now there's calls for a lot of independent. We need 55 now. Don't be Keystone guys, but there's still brands that want to be Keystone because maybe that's where the department store wants the number, and then they can get a better discount because they do a lot of volume.
right. And I think, listen, you're a big advocate for trade shows, and that's where you have these conversations and get the discovery in. But really interesting the idea of that vendor scorecard, because this is a place where I think that there's a great lesson to be learned, which is really being able to go into market appointments and negotiations with your vendors backed up by data, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Those are going to be the
That is the key. That's where, okay, the motion. Hey, Dane, we've been friends for a while, but I need this. And you're like, I can't do that for you. Oh, but guess what? This is where the data shows that this, being a store in Florida. I mean, once our store grew and I needed $1 million worth of merchandise in January to do the volume that I needed to, uh, I would ask a couple vendors, hey, can I have 60 days on my initial run that comes in January? So, because I just I don't have $1 million sitting around to do that. So it is work and then with the vendor store card, you can go to your vendors and go, okay, if I go in and say your turnover was below my store, your gross margin was above my store, your sales, you're my number 8, then you go in with them and vendors want to be partners, your reps want to be partners. If you give them the data, then they can go, okay, wow, we're low on margin. We're going to have an incentive buy if you do this. So if you can hit 125 pair or 200 pair, we can get you an extra 5 points. They will be able to point that out to you when you go, hey, you're a growing brand, so let's do this.
Yeah, and it also will dictate exactly what you need from that vendor, right? So
Right, right.
if their turn rate is well below your store, maybe they need to swap out for fresh goods more often and be open to that so you could actually ask for what you need. And then one of the things that we also kind of hit on is this idea that just because you're growing your sales, we're talking a lot about margin, we're talking about how you grew your business to a
Right.
55%, MMU, just because you're growing your sales does not mean you're making more money. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because I know you have a strong opinion here.
Yeah, and it was one of my mentors in the business. He worked for my uncle years ago. He was his general man. He took the job that I guess I was promised, and when I said no, he took the job. But then I think in 1990 or so, he left my uncle's store, and he opened up his store about a mile and a half from, or 3 miles from us, and did very well. And I know when I started, he said, "Oh, I'm doing 650,000." I'm like, "Wow." Well, then he opened up another bay of a kind of a private, not a private brand, but just of one brand. And he goes, "Oh, I increased my business." I asked him, I said, "How are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I increased my business 250,000." I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's great. So how much profit do you have out of that?" I said, "None." So I'm like, "So you went from 650 to 900 and you opened up a new bay, all the lease, the lease for that, all the stock, the employee stuff, and you made no more money?" That's where I'm like, "No, you got to make money. The idea isn't to be a $2 million store or 1 million or 2 million or 3 million. It's to make the living that you want to get out of your store." And then
Yeah,
there's different ways of doing that.
and this is something that we hear a lot. I'm putting in so many more hours, so much more work, and I'm making, my gross sales are going up, but and my revenue is increasing, but I'm not actually walking away at the end of the day with any more dollars in my pocket.
No, and I mean, I made a lifestyle choice. Okay, I'm having a son. I'm working 7:30 to 9:30, 10 every day, and sometimes on Saturday. I will never have a relationship with my son. But with the store, I could do that, during my January, February, March, April when it's tough. My daughter hated spring because we were always gone working. But guess what? I had the summer off because there's no business in Florida. Everybody's back up north at their own stores. Hopefully, I sold them the shoes first. But it's a lifestyle choice. So you make that decision. Yes, like I said, I made $5,000 in 2008, but I made great money in other years too. So there's the good and bad, as we said earlier, about being your own merchant and owning your own store. When times are tough, yeah, it's bad, but when times are great, it's good. So you plan for that, and then if you use best practices going forward, then hopefully when you have that year where you don't have any money, I had money to pay my bills, but I didn't have money to pay myself.
Right. And that happens. And these are the decisions that independent retailers have to make. And the reason why I love having conversations with you and other people in the industry that have been store owners is that it's just a completely different perspective, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And the way that you're approaching now that you work with, dozens, if not hundreds, I would assume hundreds of retailers.
2,800 stores are under the NSRA label.
Okay, wow. So that's a tremendous chunk, and you're coming from the perspective of being in their, pun intended, in their shoes.
In their shoes.
Right. And I think that's so important that we're not just talking about this theoretically, but the experience of, hey, my sales are down. I may not be able to make payroll this week. I gotta dip into my own and I gotta pass
Right.
on a paycheck this week.
Yeah. Luckily, I was one because I had money. I mean, my wife and I were able to buy my store. We didn't pay ourselves for a year and a half because we had made a lot of money, her as a buyer, me as a banker beforehand, that we are able to always have the working capital. And what's your best friend? Money. Your vendors want to get paid. I remember we had discussions amongst people during COVID. Oh, don't pay your vendors. Cash is king. Keep it. But then one of my friends was a vendor, says, "Mark, I have 2 containers on the ocean right now. I've already paid for the shoes. If you don't pay me, then I'm going bankrupt." So it is, that's where I kind of said during COVID, it was a partnership between the retailer, the vendor, and the landlord. You had to work something out amongst the three that works best for everybody because you can't just screw one guy. It's a partnership. And even now, that's why I say your vendors are partners. We kind of touch on D2C is like, yeah, they found an opportunity. We kind of left them in COVID. Oh, we're not going to order. We don't want those shoes. Well, we're closed. So what they do, they built their websites and they became more to D2C. They saw the profits there. And so that's where, okay, some of them are shareholders, own companies, and hey, we need to grow. And that's one of the way for them to grow margin and grow sales. But you just want the people that have map, that have a good strategy to D2C, that we don't want 40% off on Thanksgiving, Black Friday weekend, then you're stuck. But then you work with them. Hey, if I match your price, will you give me 40% off my fill-ins? It does work. And that's where it's important to be friendly and know all of your brands and vendors that you work with.
Yeah, and this is where I see the footwear industry really, it probably has the most, to me, the most visible trends sometimes. You look
Mhm.
at the when like Uggs exploded, right? And you
Yeah,
could sell an Ugg all day long. People were rushing into the stores, and then that crashes a little bit.
yeah,
Not saying that Uggs are no longer a relevant brand, but they don't have that same fever. Trends really hit hard in the footwear industry. And you should ride those trends out, but you also can't put all your eggs in that one basket. And so let's
right,
look,
right.
let's look right now. We're seeing a slowdown in Birkenstock sales, especially with the Arizona that was just flying off every shelf. And now you're seeing that slowdown in overall sales in Birkenstock. Not saying it's not going to be a relevant brand and you need it in your product mix. And of course, there's still a tremendous customer base, but it's not that fire that it was. So, how do retailers get in front of that? I mean, has there been anything that's replaced that Birkenstock right now, or can you read the tea leaves a little bit?
No, I mean, I really I heard it from one of your podcast webinars that you did with, I think you and Mark were talking. That's the first time I heard about a slowdown. I asked a few people. I mean, with some people, it's still on fire. Other people, yeah, it's slowed down a little bit, but okay. Then once then that goes to your buying. Okay, maybe I need to do 80% core, 20% fashion versus 60% core, and trying to get the fringe colors of the Arizona or your best seller in your area. But no, Birkenstock's going to be there. They're a great brand. They're a great partner. David Kahn, who's their U.S. president, I mean, he's one of the most vocal people for independence, and will tell you this is what you need to do and things. So that's why I said there are partners. It might be slowing down, but it's still the number one brand for a lot of our retailers.
Right.
So
And
yeah, maybe it
what a
slowed,
great
but somewhere else they did it.
perspective though of looking at your actual product mix with them. How much am I going into core? How much am I going into fashion styles? What that looks like? Am I bringing in the oh, is it the Boston or the Arizona? We may have to fact
Arizona's
check
the
that.
two strap.
Yes, and then
Boston's
the
the
Boston,
cloth.
I'm sorry, the Boston exploded. The Arizona is the classic of all
Yeah.
classics, right? The Boston exploded into the stratosphere, and
Yes.
now that's what we're seeing come down. Good fact correction. And,
Okay.
and but looking into that product mix, right? Maybe you can't do those fringe colors. Maybe you go deeper into core and really understand. I mean, I think it all comes back to really understanding. You're a data guy, you know this, but you can anticipate the business and the trends by what you're seeing in your own numbers. So
Right.
exactly. Okay, let's talk about some other trends though, and you put me on to some of these. We're seeing a comfort comeback.
Yeah. I mean, well, everything ebbs and flows, like you said with Uggs. Okay, it was the top thing. You couldn't keep them in stock, and you're trying to get them from your friends to sell to your best customer, and they didn't have it. So it went up, but then it went down, went up again, and then maybe last year everybody overbought because oh my God, it exploded again. But then they overbought. Oh yeah, they sold the same amount last year, but they were expecting a 20% increase. It was only a 10%. So they were stuck with 10% more product they want. And that's the hard part is trying to figure out the trends, but knowing, yeah, like On Running, I mean, they're somewhat struggling a little bit. And they were kicking out, I mean, the store that one of my stores I sold, they were selling 4,200 pair of On Runnings a year in 2023, and they dropped them. And what do you do to get that? So then that's where okay, I recommended okay, get Brooks Hoka. They couldn't get Hoka, they got Brooks, but you have to replace those things. And so yeah, things will go up and down, but have managing your open to buy. Okay, if you see your turnover slowing down, then that's going to affect your open to buy. That's where management one is so great with helping people because you have the data from yourselves, but all the other okay, the dress industry, the apparel is doing this. Okay, colleges, bookstores, this is where they are. This is where retail is doing, and so you guys have the industry data. I mean, we do uh, uh, business performance report every 3 years, and you guys helped us. It was with a independent company, but Mark, I talked to Mark about lots of things and stuff. So yeah, we you got to use that data to figure out where you are. But once again, your store is different. You got to figure out where you are. Okay, I didn't take stock after February 15th, as I said earlier, because I wouldn't have the season to do it. So If a vendor really wanted me to get it, okay, you got to give me a discount or you got to give me dating or something because that's going to stay on my shelves longer.
And that's the best example of why we plan at the category level,
Right.
because
Category. Yeah.
brands do come and go,
Yeah.
right? And if you keep investing in a brand that's just not producing for you, you're buying back into something that's actually going to hurt your business. So we love to see that category driven. Another trend that is really infiltrating, I think, footwear and beyond is this explosion of outdoor lifestyle merging into everyday and fashion goods. Are you
Yeah.
seeing that right now?
Oh, totally. And I never really answered your question about casual, but it's been kind of with the slowdown of athletic. And okay, for 5 years, we've kind of been okay. I wear my suit with that with a casual, and guess what? I maybe want to wear a nice dress shoe or a casual shoe. And outdoor has become commonplace. Casual has become you can wear a casual shoe now that you would have never worn with a suit or slacks before because that is the style. We COVID made us okay. You're stuck at home, so you want to wear something comfortable. I'll use the Dolly Parton example. She wore rhinestones her
Oh,
whole life, and she goes, "Well, nope. When I die, I want to be buried in cotton because I finally want to be comfortable." Well, I think people, okay, I've been on this running trend, but you know what? I want to get back to looking like I did in 2018 or 2019, and wear a suit now versus just maybe not with the tie. I don't think we're there yet, but okay, I'm going to wear that. But I want to have a casual shoe that looks good, or as I said, I think the five fingers look is coming back. I mean, I don't have any data on that, but I see a lot more brands, so it makes me think when I'm at the show and I see a few people offering more of that type footwear, then maybe it's coming back. But that's where I said shows are so important because you got to find out what the trends are. My wife and I went to Miami twice. We went to Atlanta. We went to Vegas. So we went to 4 shows, and I get amazed when people they go to one show and that's it. I'm like, this is where you find out where the trends. Walk around the show. If you go to one show and then you go to the another show, you're going to go, man, I've seen this one shoe from a lot of people, so I got to pick that shoe up because I don't have it, that silhouette that I need. And then just got to go, okay, what's the best brand for me? What's the best price point for me? I mean, we had that once. We had a silhouette we wanted, but it was from a Beautiful. It was a $400 shoe, and we're like, well, our average price point's 145. Let's get this. Clark's made a great one, but theirs was $90. I didn't want nine. I get more volume at the 145 versus Monroe had it for like 190 or so. So you have to pick, and this is where you're looking at your data, knowing your customer, maybe using AI to help figure out what that is. But that's why I always say you got to go to shows to find out what the trends are.
yeah. And listen, that's what makes a great merchant. Your
Yeah,
ability to be at a show and feel these things, really like
yeah.
feel it in your bones. And
But
if
it's all
you're
it's feeling it, but it's also talk. And this is where the NSRA comes in. We try to get places where you can network and you can talk to other people and find out, oh, oh, you did well with that. Oh, your Boston slowed down. Oh, ours didn't slow down. But it's kind of your example. Okay, you said Birkenstock was down. No, it was one shoe was down. But if you didn't have that analyzed properly, you'd like, oh my gosh, sales have slowed. No, it slowed on one shoe. I'm still blowing out on another one. And that's where I think in 2008, I kind of mentioned my wife goes, we need to do more subcategories because I need to do more analysis. We got fat and lazy and we could just take, their sales just grew 20-25% every year. But no, then we had to really work at it. And the way to work at it is go down in your data and you're like, oh, like we were a narrow store. And then I found out, oh, when I first started in 94, it was 35% of my business. In 2018, it was only 8%. I didn't realize that. I was like, oh, we're a narrow store. Well, because vendors were making stores that or shoes that you can get the strap, tighten it up a little bit. Okay, this has a Velcro strap versus the old days you had to have the the buckle.
right.
And I didn't have an extra hole, so you could make it tighter on that really thin foot, or even the fatter foot or wider foot. So that's where you have to once again I hope people are on the floor to realize because when you're putting on shoes, you really understand your customer. Or,
Well,
if you're an apparel store, same thing.
great point. I mean, being on the floor as an owner, as the buyer, you can't disconnect that far from the floor.
Oh gosh, no, no.
Yeah.
My
And
wife,
with,
I was on vacation with my uncle in Maine in, I don't know, 1990 or whatever. And my wife, while we're on vacation, went from scarves, belts, and accessories to designer dresses. And my uncle's like, and so he's like, "Oh, you're not going home. You need to." Well, she had to go home to Houston because she had no clothes. We're on vacation, and then she flew right back to New York because she had to go to New York twice a month. But he's like, how do you start buying a whole different thing? Is like, but if you've been trained to be a buyer, you understand how to buy. And you can translate, yes, okay, I know shoes, but guess what? We want to get into apparel. Well, you can talk to people what apparel's hot, then you get some, you can expand. If you know how to buy, you know how to buy.
and then what does that look like? So there's a lot, and I think this happens in many types of stores, but you just mentioned a footwear retailer maybe looking to branch out into new categories, apparel, accessories. What does that look like? Because I think a lot of people sometimes go into the wrong categories, new categories or new departments. What's that looking like for footwear retailers today?
Well, you look at apparel has higher margins, accessories have higher margins. So once again, okay, if I need to expand my base, I'm going to get some apparel, or I'm going to expand my store because the store next door went out, so I can do more shoes and let me do some apparel, let me do some belts, let me do scarves. So you can move into it. But then you have the same thing. More boutiques are running in. You probably see this or getting shoes too. They're like, oh wow, this is an easy sale. I mean, I kind of noticed with our uh, shops downtown in my town, they buy for the dress, what will accompany the dress. I'm like, oh, that's no good. But then you talk to them like, oh yeah, we sold um, 9 out of the 12 purple shoes that you're like, I thought that you're going to die with it, but it matched the color of the year or whatever. So once again, they know their customer. They're buying to accessorize a dress. We're just buying for add-ons. In athletic, I mean, if you have an athletic store, you're 20% of your store is apparel,
Mm.
minimum probably. So you are doing that.
And I'm seeing big growth, in the anecdotally in clients that I'm talking to and working with. I'm seeing a lot of growth in the apparel section of that
Mhm.
business and feeding that growth and continuing to really be able to analyze it and give it some air. So we do have some questions, by the way. If you're watching live, please jump in with questions. We love to answer them right here. I have a feeling I know your answer to this, Mark, but Ed asks, do you believe in measuring for a fit or just take the word of the customer?
Personally, I took the word of the customer. I know a lot of stores, the very first thing they do, they want to show that they're an authority. We're going to measure you. It is part of their mantra. Every person gets measured. Now, it is right because sometimes I'd have a lady, she'd buy a shoe and then she'd go up north and go, oh my God, this shoe is too tight. I'm like, well, you came in and bought it when it was 50 degrees on a cold Florida morning, and you're back up in Connecticut and it's 85 degrees. Your foot is swollen. So there is, but your feet do change. If you gain weight, they're going to get wider. If you lose weight, they're going to do it. So there's two rules of that, or there's two thoughts. There's no rule. Some people measure every customer every time they come in, but if somebody measured me, I'm like, I know what I am. I'm between a 13 and 14, but this is where knowing your stock. Okay, in a Nike, I'm a 13. On a Brooks or an On, I'm a 14, or a Hoka, I'm a 14. So you got to know your brands. I saw somebody posting on their website when it was a new store, and they said, oh, a 36 is a 6, a 37 is a 7, is a I'm like, not necessarily. Sometimes you go down. A 37 is a 6, a 38 is a 7. It's not always corresponding. Just drop the first number. So you can measure, but realistically, if I know a lady, she's like, oh, I'm a 9.5. Well, if it's a full size, if it's a sandal, I can bring out a 9, but if it's a close shoe, I might have to bring the 10 out. So you're still going to be just. And I was never one to get trapped in, and this is my personal opinion. Okay, I tell them, oh, you're a size 10. Then they think all they want is a 10, and then you go, well, this brand always goes a little. They're not as long, they're a little short. So I'm not one for that, but I know probably 50% of our stores, that's the very first thing they do is measure. But you'll eventually get it on there I mean, in my store, even though it's a little more fashion, you bring out what they said, you check it, and you're like, okay, this looks a little tight. I don't think this is right. And one of my salesmen is always good. Like you look at their feet when you're putting it on, they're like, eh. Then you're just like, oh, you know what? That seems a little too tight for me. Maybe I should go back and get the bigger size. So
Yeah, and
there's no rule on that.
you said this to me, the sales staff, they are consultants. And
Yeah,
so when they're interacting with clients, they have to, I love that example. They have to know how each brand fits, even how each style may fit differently.
right.
One thing that independents will always have, and this is maybe, I'm generalizing a little bit, but if you walk into a Dick's Sporting Goods, they're handing you a shoe and they are not talking to you.
Right.
Whereas I want that high level of service where someone is going to tell me this runs a little narrow, this brand runs wide. We've been seeing customers who, the fit of this is not so great on the ankle, it's a little wobbly. That's the type of information that I want from the salesperson that I'm working with.
And if you are a store that specializes in sit and fit, you're going to be fine. I mean, think of it. I think direct to consumer, Nike found out, wait, we're returning a lot more shoes than what we thought we were. That we're spending $10 to go out, $10 to come back in because we thought that ate up all their extra margin of having not selling wholesale. And they realized that was not a winning formula. But you're still getting returns of what, 35, 40% online. So I know in store. I mean, there was a poll recently on a Shoe Dog Shoe, which is kind of a shoe person's Facebook site to talk, and I recommend everybody do it because certain issues do get brought up. And somebody's like, "What's your return rate?" And I was amazed. At one of our really good retailers, he was one of our retailers here. He said it was 10% was his returns. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. My store was probably 4%. So my people doing a better job, or we weren't on commission, so maybe they weren't pushing them into a shoe that really didn't fit. I don't know, but I thought that was a high number. But then there's a few others that perked up, and I'm like, wow, these are excellent stores, but they're still doing it, $10 million in their store, so they're doing fine. So it's like, okay, if you're doing 10, because what was it? It was Zappos. At one point they said, oh, we're a $5 million company. I'm like, no, you're a $9 billion company. You're just having $4 billion in returns come back.
Wow, that's a great way of
Yeah,
looking at
yeah.
it. Barbara, I see you have your hand up, and if you want to put a question in the chat, just feel free to type it right in the chat. I'm going to look. Maybe there is something in the Q&A as well. Nope. So Barbara, just right there in the chat, ask a question to Mark, myself, and we will get that answered for you. I see you have your hand raised. Okay, so we have a few minutes left here. This has been such a great discussion. Anything else on your mind? What's hot right now? What's your outlook on the industry? I know that we didn't get to talk that much about AI, but if you have any thoughts on how that's impacting the shoe dogs out there, or how it's impacting the industry at large, would love to hear your take.
Well, that was going to be my take. That if you're not, we've now over the last 3 years done 4 education seminars on at our annual conference that we have in various cities, April 28th, 29th in Austin. A little plug
Good
there for
plug.
us.
Good plug.
But it's and we did the AI, and we had two buyers, Adam, and then we had a vendor on the side. And if you're not on AI, it's time to get into it. I mean, I was using it this morning. I was kind of analyzing our Facebook post, and I'm like, okay, so I got the stats from Meta. Okay, this is what it is, and then ask AI, can you look at my National Shoe Retailers Association Facebook thing versus the data of all the visits and this and that. And it just gave me, okay, you need to do more organic. I mean, the ones that were the most popular, the ones I'm doing at a show or with pictures of people at events. That's what people wanted to see versus sometimes it's like, oh, here's the educational thing, or okay, there's a management one seminar next Thursday, join it. Okay, you get a little activity on there. So it did give me, okay, you need to do more of this. I'm not going to get into everything, but
Right.
as a buyer, it's the same thing. The buyers at the show, they were getting the line sheets from people, putting it at AI. Here's my 50-page line sheet. It'll take a few minutes to analyze. AI is not that fast. Then this is my results. And what it would do would grab, okay, on this product, You should not buy it because you had it in a similar and it didn't sell, or you have this one so you don't need this one, or you have this one but your sales were great, you sold out. You need to get another one of these. So you can use line sheets. Adam was kind of talking about how to help with open to buy, your retail orbit. It's like, once again, hey, you're getting all this industry information to compare yourself against. So why do it alone? And that's where we are. We're trying to help people not be alone. Giving you those networking opportunities, giving these seminars. But yeah, AI, if you're not there, you really got to get into. You can do it for buying. You're open to buy, analyzing your data once you get there, marketing. I can kind of now tell when somebody does an advertisement on Facebook or Instagram that, okay, that was AI generated, because they kind of are starting to look the same. So, but you need to go, okay, we need to figure something out. One of our panelists, he gets 300 emails a day. He is an
Wow.
AI organizer that'll tell you these are the ones you need to respond to. These are the top 30 that you need to respond to when you get your chance. These have deadlines. Okay, this is this is 2 weeks away. You can hold off on your response or something. So he was using his Google scheduler or something. Like it would go through and go, this is what you need to do. You can do marketing. Somebody did the thing where they took pictures of their store and all their sections, gave that to AI, and then they take pictures that morning. Their manager would come in, take the pictures, and go, oh, these are the 10 shoes you're missing from the wall. Because you always go to the wall and like, God, what shoe is that I'm missing? And you have no idea. But AI was saying, oh, you're missing this black Hoka that you had there yesterday, but they sold the display. And then you can
Wow.
use it for HR. I mean, we've had people build all of their. Now you have to watch out because AI is not perfect, but yeah, it does their employee manuals. It does. Okay, I have a problem. I had somebody had a problem with, okay, this. How do I tell this person they need to brush their teeth or use a mint? It's one of their employees. It's so how can I talk to them about hygiene? They're not using deodorant. I got to tell them, hey, this is going to be bad, but I don't want to go against certain laws or whatever. So you can use AI as a guide, then go back and look at, okay, this is a state law on it. So you do that. So there's so many ways to do it. Your data, people are always afraid my data is open source and people will get it. No, use AI properly. You have to, in part of our seminars, you have to learn how to prompt. So they had one guy tell this guy, okay, go to this person. Oh, there's 2 blue suits. Who do I go to? Well, that's why you need to be more specific in your question.
Yeah.
So you got to get on the AI bandwagon. And I just was looking at all of our evaluation sheets and recommendations for next time. Guess what it all was? More
AI.
uses of AI.
But
AI.
as we say, be careful because
Yes,
any decisions, especially monetary, we want to be careful. All right, Mark, it
it's a
was
time
fan.
saver. It's a time saver. That's
It
all it
is
is.
a time saver. Save some time. Mark, it was great chatting. Where could people find the NSRA? What show are you going to be at next? Give our listeners some heads up on how they can get in contact with
You
the
can always find
NSRA.
us at nsra.org. You can go to info at nsra.org. It goes to somebody on my staff, my membership director. But if it's a specific question, she sends it to me. I'm talking to retailers every week, helping them with problems. We just got somebody, oh, I'm opening up a new store and I want to, ship out on your UPS program. I'm like, no, the most important thing is to get the shipping inbound from your vendors, because that's where, okay, if you're getting a 18 pair pack and you're getting 10 boxes, that's the volume, not the one box you're sending out. But it's little things like that I try to help people with.
All right, great. Well, Mark, it is always a pleasure. We are excited about our continued partnership, and you'll be seeing a lot more of Mark in the community, and hopefully, we'll be seeing a lot more of the NSRA folks. And we have a deep love and affection for the shoe dogs out there. So, thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us, Mark, and thank you for listening to Indie Insights Live. We'll see you next Thursday with our a great guest. We're excited for this one. It's going to be Max Retail is going to be joining
Oh,
us.
will it
Fantastic.
be Melody at
Me-
Max Retail?
we have Melody from Max Retail joining us. So we will see you next week. And Mark, thank you again.
And I'll be on next week. Melody's has a lot to offer. One of our partners, partners of both organizations.
Yes, yes. It's a small independent world. All right,
Yeah.
signing off. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.